Szymanski, Curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we're going to do the first in what may become a series of videos about conversion proposals for the Iowa-class battleships. Now, if you watched our video in the description below on things the Navy didn't like about Iowa-class battleships, you got a taste of a couple of changes that the Navy wanted to make. And these ships were constantly being modified throughout their career. Every time they were brought back to service, they got upgrades, new equipment, and there were constantly plans to change things which, for monetary reasons or other reasons, just never materialized. So, if you like this content, let us know in the description below. Tell us about other things you want to see, and we might continue this series on other things. So today's video is based off of viewer-like you's comments, talking about this model right here, which we have on display in the Officers' Wardroom Lounge on Battleship New Jersey. The Battlecarrier concept is not new. It had been tried a number of times. Various designs for it by the United States and foreign navies existed. A number of early carriers were converted from battleships or battle cruisers. HMS Furious had both a flight deck and an 18-inch gun. The Japanese, during World War II, when they started losing their carriers, converted two of their battleships by removing the two after turrets and replacing with a flight deck. The ability of aircraft to strike targets really far away is extremely enticing, along with the armor of the battleship and their ability to win surface engagements. So this is a concept that pops up over and over again and is even paralleled by the Cold War era Kiev-class Soviet carriers, which had both a heavy missile battery on their bow and flight decks for vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So while this concept looks wild, it's not too far out of things that were actually done by other navies. This model is of the Phase 2 rebuild of USS New Jersey during her 1980s commission. And this model was made by John C. Rux of Pennsylvania, and allegedly it was in the Pentagon or perhaps in John Lehman's office, or it was on display. This was a model made to show what could be done with the Iowa-class battleships if you went a step further than the missile conversion they got in the 1980s. This model was originally in the collection of the Battleship New Jersey Historical Museum Society, which is one of the precursor groups that predates the museum. Even before the ship was decommissioned for the last time, groups formed to preserve and turn the ship into a museum in New Jersey. And eventually, all of those groups coalesced into the Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, which we have today. But this was collected by them prior to its inclusion in the modern museum. So, let's talk about this design. The Iowas were brought back in the 1980s for two basic reasons. One, the Soviet Navy had just built their Kirov-class battlecruisers, which were huge missile ships, the largest surface combatants in the world at the time. And we needed more battle groups to be able to counter the expanding Soviet Navy. So we decided if we brought back battleships, we could have surface action groups in addition to our carrier battle groups. And then these surface action groups can be deployed much closer to enemy territory than the carriers because of their heavy armor. And they can be deployed in response to ships like the Kirovs. The other reason to bring these ships back was because of their 16-inch guns. There were no ships in the world at that time, and there still aren't any now in the Navy that have guns like this. And these guns are really, really tremendous at supporting amphibious operations, supporting the Marines ashore. And we still haven't replaced them, and that's one of the things that gave the Islas their longevity. So this plan looks at that need to support the Marines and takes it one logical step further. We make these ships less capable as surface combatants and less the centerpiece of a battleship battle group, and we make them able to independently launch and support marine amphibious assaults, which was a very common thing during the Reagan era, with incursions in Grenada and Panama, places like that, which did not need the entire Marine Corps, several divisions worth of troops going ashore all at once. It just needed a small group to go ashore, sort out their government in a way that was beneficial to the United States, and then pull out a little bit later, or get replaced by troops that can be flown in that after that. So, the crux of this design is you remove the after 16-inch gun turret. Now you have saved some 2,000 or more tons of weight. In place of that 16-inch gun turret, you put vertical launch tubes for Tomahawk cruise missiles. And some Tomahawks can be used against seaborne targets, but many are used for supporting land invasions against surface targets ashore. So with all of those missiles, you have very precision strike capability against land targets, and these vertical launch tubes for missiles would have outnumbered what other ships of the time had. And when New Jersey was reactivated in 1982, she was the first ship armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. We were trying to get these to sea as quickly as possible, and the initial ships we put them on, the battleships, the nuclear cruisers, and some other ships, they got armored box launchers, and it was a period of time before we were able to put vertical launch tubes in things like the Ticonderoga-class cruisers and the Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers, which are the mainstays of the fleet today. So this was really modern thinking at the time, and would have been really effective at supporting amphibious operations. In addition to that, the after part of the ship would be turned into a hangar, a flight deck complete with ski ramp, and berthing, so that you can hold something like 800 Marines, an entire expeditionary battalion, their vehicles, their potentially amphibious craft, but definitely their helicopters, and the AV-8B Harrier strike plane, which is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which during the 1980s was being used aboard the amphibious assault carriers. So this takes the entire amphibious strike group, the carriers themselves, which carry the bulk of the troops, the landing equipment, and the aircraft, and their support ships, which would be doing the shore bombardment and escort duty, and it replaces it with a single ship. You can put all the guys on here, all their equipment, you've got all of the firepower to support them, and it's a big armored ship, so you do not need to escort it, in theory. In practice, this isn't actually a great idea. These ships would have had to be escorted. It wouldn't be saving money. And with 9 16-inch guns, these ships are really, really great shore bombardment assets. The only reason to keep these huge, expensive, manpower-intensive, and ancient ships around is those 16-inch guns. So you start peeling them off and replacing them with things that other ships in the fleet already do, and do better because they're dedicated to it, and you get a ship with very little utility. So, jack of all trades, master of none. These ships are already the masters of shore bombardment. Why take one of these when you can take a couple of much cheaper vessels that are going to last a lot longer because they're not already 30 or 40 years old? So this model sort of predates the actual conversion that New Jersey got. And you can see it's got a lot of the same stuff. It's got phalanx guns on there as the point defense weapon. They're not in the same locations that they are carried. You can see we've got one up here at the bow, and that is a terrible place because of the sensitive electronics and the amount of water that these ships ship over the bow. That would have been ruined, so that wouldn't have worked. For medium defense against aircraft, original designs called for the Sea Sparrow missile system, which is another contemporary system we still use. However, those box launchers are very susceptible to shock. Not an issue in modern ships, a huge issue in a ship with 16-inch guns. So in the final design of these ships in the 80s, they had to be scrapped. In this design, they could have easily put one back aft and it would have been able to function, and we would have had a mid-tier anti-air defense. This model doesn't show it, but it would have probably been included. So we've got the vertical launch tubes, we've got angled flight decks so jump jets can take off with the angled assist, doesn't need a catapult, doesn't need arrestor cables because they can touch down vertically. It's got elevators along the edges. They replace some of the 5-inch guns with modern automatic mounts, and I don't believe the model gets that right, so they would have either replaced all of them or none of them. This has replaced a lot of the half of the rangefinders for the 5-inch guns, and hasn't really replaced them with a modern rangefinder. But notice it keeps a 5-inch 38 and then adds 2 of these automatic 5-inch 54 mounts, and do the complete change or don't. Would have been a more effective ship if they had changed to the more modern equipment. Would have been more costly. These ships already cost more to recommission, somewhere in the range of $300 million per ship. So not worth the money. You see there's a new rangefinder on top of the mast. That was something they looked at, replacing the World War II range-finding computer with more modern digital stuff. And in the end, they said, that's going to be too expensive, and it's not going to be better. It can be equivalent to the 1930s electromechanical analog computer, but it won't be better. In practice, it might have given these ships more longevity, because sailors of the modern Navy know how to use the modern digital stuff. They had to be retrained how to use the analog stuff. You'll notice that between the funnels, they have not removed a lot of the World War II stuff. She still has the height-finding radar on the mast. She still has the 40mm gun tubs in place. These were all cut off, and that's where the armored box launchers for the Tomahawks ended up. Like the modern conversion, 2 of the 5-inch gun mounts have been removed. The after rangefinder has been removed and replaced with the Seaways. I don't think that would have been the case in the actual Phase 2. So, another thing to point out about this, only New Jersey was slated to get this Phase 2. The other Iowas were not. All 4 were going to be brought back. New Jersey was brought back first because she had been active fairly recently compared to the others. And she got the Ulster reworking, which is the configuration she and the other Iowas are in now. And the other Iowas were going to get their reworking. And then New Jersey would have gone back in and had this done, and would have probably been a proof of concept, and if the Navy liked it, they might have done it to the other ships. And because New Jersey got the first reworking, some things like her combat engagement center and whatnot are much smaller and less sophisticated than the conversions that later ships got. If you get the chance to visit us and then go visit Wisconsin, which was the last one reactivated, there's a huge world of difference between the capacity of our combat engagement center and their combat engagement center. Be sure to check them out. So there would have probably been other changes along with this. Like I said before, it did not happen, and it probably would not have been particularly effective if it did happen. We've got no shortage of the dedicated carriers and strike groups for this sort of thing, and a single unit could not do what it was marketed to do and replace everything. There's a reason we didn't go with this. Thanks for watching today. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions for other conversions to do, or if you really like this kind of video and would like to see more of it in the future, let us know in the comment section down below. If you'd like to support the museum and our YouTube channel, check out the donate button in the description below. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to be notified when we're putting out new content. We're releasing extremely regularly. And thanks for watching today.